Hi and welcome to MRTV. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at the controllers of the HP Reverb G2. We're going to check out how they feel and how the buttons click. Also, we're going to weigh them and just find out how they compare against all the other controllers that are on the market right now. So absolutely stay tuned, watch the whole video, and all of this goodness is coming up. Welcome back again here to MRTV. My name is Sebastian Ang, and this channel is all about virtual reality. I'm bringing you unbiased and honest reviews of all the VR headsets, of VR accessories, and you're getting the latest news. So if you want to see more videos just like this one here, consider subscribing and click on the bell button so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Alright, but without further ado now, let's check out the controllers of the HP Reverb G2. And here are all the contenders of today's MRTV controller showdown. Before we get into the ring, of course, the official weigh-in. And we start with the G2 controller, weighing in at 186 grams. All right. This is still under heavyweight, which is over 200 grams. And here we go with the Windows Mixed Reality controller, the old one, weighing in at 184 grams. So a bit less than the new G2 controller. And here we are, the Oculus Touch controller of the Rift S and the Quest. Only 128 grams. This is a real lightweight. And now the Vive Index controller, the champion, with 196 grams, also under the 200 grams heavyweight category. Now here we go. This is the Cosmos controller, and this is a true heavyweight at 219 grams. So there's lots of power, but is also the agility there. We're going to see it in the ring. And here another heavyweight. This is the HTC Vive One controller, weighing in at 202 grams, also heavyweight category. And my personal favorite, the Oculus Touch controller of the original CV1, coming in at a good 163 grams. And now let's get into the comparisons. And in our first comparison, we're going to match the new G2 controller here on the right against the old Windows Mixed Reality controller on the left. And as you can tell, directly, the ergonomics are way better. This is a way improved controller as compared to the original one. So as you can tell, we have button parity here with Oculus Touch. So we have one thumbstick, which is clickable. We have two buttons, A and B, and we have two menu buttons. Then we have a trigger, analog, and also we have a grip button, which is now also analog, and that was not analog in the old controller. We're going to check it out in a moment. Yeah, this is using two batteries. And before we get into everything here in this video, let me tell you, this controller is still not functional. So I have a version of this which doesn't work yet, so I cannot comment on how long the battery lasts and all these things. And this video is just about the haptics, how does it feel, and how do the buttons click, and so on and so forth. Once I get a working controller, I'm going to make another video, of course. Still, I think this video should be really interesting because you can see the size comparisons and the button comparisons, and I'll just tell you how it feels. So the first round definitely goes to the G2. This is way better than the old Windows Mixed Reality controller. And we have another contender. This is the Samsung Odyssey controller, which is also a bit different as compared to the original Windows Mixed Reality controller. And this weighs in at 198 grams, so a bit heavier. Now, this one is also more ergonomic than the original Windows Mixed Reality controller, but in direct comparison with the G2 controller wins. Also here, one problem of this controller, you could easily open the battery compartment while playing. And this happened to me lots of times playing Beat Saber. So this was a big problem. And with the G2 controller, you don't have this problem because the battery compartment is here. And well, this area is always protected by your palm, so you will not open this by mistake. And well, this is really a very big improvement over the Samsung controllers. So the G2 controllers also win against the Samsung Odyssey controllers. Now let's compare the G2 controller on the left with the Oculus Touch controller of the Rift S and the Quest on the right. So as you can tell, we have the same button layout. We have a grip button, trigger button, thumbstick, and 2 buttons, and for the Windows mixed reality controller we even have 2 menu buttons. Now this feels really good in the hands. The controller is really light, as you know, the Oculus Touch, but for my big hands, as you can tell here with the pinky, it is a bit too short and a bit too small. And here with the G2 controller, the pinky is perfectly on the controller, so this is for my big hands a bit more comfortable than the Oculus Touch controller. Also, I must say, for the Oculus Touch controller, it is a bit too light in my opinion. So this is a bit better here with the G2. But the G2 is a bit more front heavy because of this big ring, the big tracking ring. So that is a bit better with the Oculus Touch controller, where you don't have this front heaviness. Also with Oculus Touch, you only need 1 battery as compared to the 2 batteries of the G2 controller. And you have capacitive touch buttons on those buttons, so the controller will know if your fingers rest on the controllers, and you don't have this with the G2 controllers. So definitely in terms of functionality, the Oculus Touch controller wins. Now for button travel, for the Oculus Touch we have a longer button travel, and for the G2 it feels a bit shorter, and actually I like that more, but well, this is definitely up to everyone's own taste. So the G2 buttons are a bit more clicky, I would call that. Now with all that said, I would say the Oculus Touch controller is the better controller here, but the G2 controller is definitely not bad. Alright, the next controller that we're going to compare with the G2 controller is the original Oculus Touch controller of the CV1. And I must tell you, I'm a big fan of this controller. In my opinion, this is probably the best VR controller that has ever been made, and I'm a bit sad that this controller didn't make it to the Rift S and the Quest. It doesn't feel too light like the new Oculus Touch. It doesn't feel too heavy like other controllers that we're going to check out later. It feels just right. And also quality-wise, this feels so high quality. And again, I'm sad that this controller had to go. All right, let's have a look here at the thumbstick. Also, the material that's being used. It is more of a rubbery material, so you have more grip, and you don't have this with this G2 controller at all. It's just some plastic, and well, it's just not as good as what we see here with the Oculus Touch controller. And also with the new Oculus Touch controller, it also has the better thumbstick. So here a clear win for the Oculus Touch controllers. So far for the G2, I would say it's a knockoff of the Oculus Touch controllers, but it's a good enough knockoff. Alright, now here the direct comparison with the HTC Vive Wands, the first VR controllers that we had with the HTC Vive. And that is not bad for games where you have to hold like a sword or a pistol, but for others it's not so great. Here, the trigger button is a bit different. You have a little click at the very end, and that is actually a nice touch. So for Oculus Touch and for the G2 controller, you don't have that click at the very end. Everything is just like a one analog button. But here, analog until the very end, and then there's a little click. Of course, we have the touchpad here with the Vive Wands, and yeah, no real buttons. So this is not a great controller. Definitely for this, I would give it to the G2 controller. In my opinion, that's the better controller here. And the next controller that we're going to compare this with is the HTC Vive Cosmos controller. Now, this is a true heavyweight, as you've seen in the weigh-in, more than 200 grams. And well, it does feel bulky as well. So it looks cool, but well, looking cool doesn't help you in this category. And I'm telling you, if you start to sweat, this controller is really not easy to hold, and yeah, not so nice. So here we have two trigger buttons, and also it does have a little click here in the end. Then we have a grip button, and this grip button is not analog, so only digital. It can tell, yes, you're holding it, or no, you're holding it not. Then let's check out the battery compartment, and here you also need two AA batteries, just like with the G2 controller. Unfortunately, with this controller, another big problem is that the accuracy of the tracking just is not on par with all the other controllers. And well, you've seen that in my Cosmos reviews. Other than that, it also has button parity with Oculus Touch. And well, Yeah, it's a clear win here for the G2 controller. And if you come from the Cosmos, you're going to love the G2 controllers. Alright, and here we get to the main event here now. On the right, the Vive Index controller, and on the left, the G2 controller. As you can tell, the Vive Index controller is quite a bit heavier, and this is important. This here allows you to attach the controller to your hand. And like this, for example, you can throw grenades, and well, the controller will stay on your hand, and that is definitely one of the best things that the Vive Index controller introduced here to VR controllers in general. Other than that, we have a thumb stick, we have this thumb pad that I've never used, we have two buttons that click OK, and we have this trigger, which just like the Vive One's controllers has a little click in the end. And we don't have a grip button, but this whole area is touch sensitive. So it will know if you're holding a weapon, for example, or if you're giving a strong handshake, and that is pretty cool. Also, it has full finger tracking, so for VR chat or for any other game that supports it, you can do some gestures, and this will be represented in VR. So lots of features. However, I must also tell you that with just the ergonomics, I prefer the G2 controller. It feels better in my hand than the Vive Index controller, and some might be really surprised about this, but in my opinion, the Vive Index controller is not really an ergonomic controller. So it is okay, but I really don't need that touchpad, for example. Also, the grip, while big and big enough for my big hands, still it doesn't feel really good in my hands. So if it was just about the ergonomics, I would give it to the G2 controller here. But of course, the Vive Index controller is still amazing. The tracking is perfect. You got the finger tracking, and well, I really love the fact that you can attach it to your hands to throw things. Overall, for the G2 controller, I would say this is a really good controller. It's a knockoff of the Oculus Touch controller, but it's a good one. Alright, and that's it for this G2 controller video. Now, if you still have any ideas for G2 content that you would like to see on the channel, please do let me know down in the comment section of this video. Now, that's it. I really hope it was helpful for you. If yes, give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you have not yet subscribed to MRTV yet, then absolutely do so now and click on the bell button so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. That's it. I'm looking forward to see you in the next episode.